Welcome to Interesting Enough. He is Trey. I am Nolan. Thank you guys so much for joining us once again. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. Got a good show for you guys. We got a lot of stuff to get into football wise, college and NFL. Trey, man, what's going on?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. You know what I'm saying? Not much going on, but I'm feeling great, man. How about you?
I feel good. We're gonna talk about some of the football stuff, but before we really dive into it, we haven't really done a lot of non-sports topics in a while. And because we talk about football, we got to talk about one of the biggest faces in football, Shannon Sharp. The video dropped this week. And for those, I'm smiling, but for those who haven't seen it, Shannon Sharp released a video, went live by mistake. He alleges, I would say.
Was it a mistake?
That's what I'm gonna get it. That's what I wanted to ask. So Shannon Sharp says he went on live by mistake. He was participating in some acts with a woman. You couldn't see them, but you can kind of hear them. He apologizes. And I didn't really know this was a thing where people weren't thinking it was a mistake until I kind of heard Cameron and Mays talk about it. I'm kind of torn because if the argument that they're making for it, I can see because I've never been on live, but I can see the argument of you got to confirm the live, even if you're going to get on live, you got to click a couple buttons. There's like a lot of minutia with that, but first of all, do you really think he would do that, Trey? That's because like that's the main question. Is it something that you think he would do, and then we can go to if he actually did it.
See, that's why I was talking to me and one of my homeboys. We were like, we just don't believe that he's not cut like that, where he would do something like that. But again, it goes back to what you just said about how many steps you need to do and confirm just to get on Instagram Live. I've never used it, but from what I hear everybody saying, it's at least three steps.
Yeah,
So it just kind of, to me, it's kind of hard to believe. Like, what, your hand slipped up there and you hit it three times while you were doing the deed?
right. Yeah, that's the part that's confusing because all right, not to get too technical here, but if you've seen the video, the camera the phone is facing up. So maybe he did like maybe the back camera and like maybe the button kept clicking on the bed or something like that. So maybe. But here's my only thing though. You and I believe that Shannon probably would or Unc probably wouldn't do that. Just from what he portrays
Yes.
that how he's cut. However, I got to be fair. As much as how he says how he's cut, Unc has shown that he will do things for views, in particular in Nightcap and the things that they're talking about, which I think a lot of the conversation is organic. But he knows people are coming for the views to hear him and Ocho talk about some explicit things. And, it's very different from what he's going to talk about on ESPN. And gets a lot of views and clicks from that. Obviously, we see how he reacted with the Cat Williams thing. And I'm not saying that any other interview from there on, I don't think he's chasing a Cat Williams interview. But he's definitely interviewed some people that have had some controversial topics and things to say. Tyrese just recently he interviewed him right like after that type of situation, and we don't even know the people that he is reaching out to that maybe are not on yet or saying no. So I think sometimes I don't want the way I think about him in total to kind of warp what I would think he would be impossible to even do. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely get it. And like you said, it just
It's
goes back to
tough.
that what we know of Shannon Sharp at this point. Even though, like you said, I'm not gonna say he's chasing views, but he definitely doesn't turn his head away at views. Like that's his job at this point to get views. But this seems like a little bit a bit extreme. Now, the one thing is he does promote enhancements or supplements for those kind of acts. So, like,
Yeah.
if somebody was going to say there was somebody who would do something like this, and they didn't tell me who it was, I would be like, yes, the person that promotes stuff like that.
And listen, I listened to his apology. We talked about this before the pod. Having reading that ad for a male enhancement before apologizing about that is crazy. It's crazy work. And then after that, in the middle of his apology, then bragging about it is also kind of wild. But that's him. And I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he didn't stage it, but there's like probably like a 20% chance I have in my brain that I'm like, if he were to stage it, this would be the way to stage it. And I guess the other question I would ask, what would you gain from it? And outside of just the popularity, I was thinking like, what else would be more important to him? But maybe that just is the most important thing. Maybe just being that popular and being relevant. And he's already relevant because he's on ESPN First Take. He's on there every day. That's the biggest sports show. But being relevant in terms of like pop culture and like social media, you know, that was the biggest news for at least a 24-hour cycle. And is that something where Shannon is feeling like, maybe he's drunk off of that attention in a way? And maybe doesn't even realize it. But if that's something that he would do, we can never find out about it. Like you can agree on that, right? Like we could never know. Like if that was something that he staged. And how
Oh,
would we
hey
ever know?
man, he needs to lie. That's something he staged. Like when he first came around and said, "Oh, my phone has been hacked or my Instagram has been hacked." Yeah, he just, hey, just keep on lying.
Yeah, he definitely had to lie. He definitely had to lie. So yeah, I don't know with Unc, but I mean, hey, he got us to talk about it. So I guess that's good. But listen, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit of college football. We got some good matchups coming up. I think
Ten-
Michigan
Tennessee, Oklahoma
plays
this week.
Texas Oklahoma.
No, Tennessee, Oklahoma.
Oh, Tennessee Oklahoma. That's gonna be a good game. I think we got Michigan and USC. I think it is. I think I'm just
Yeah, we got
confusing,
that as well. Yeah,
but we don't really have to get too deep in the matchups. Can we just talk about Arch Manning? I mean, listen, everybody was already excited about Arch Manning for the name for obvious reasons. He stayed at Texas when he probably could have transferred to any school in the country, and we've seen him play a little bit in the spring games. We knew he could ball a little bit, but this was the first chance we got to see him come in, albeit in relief of Quinn Ewers, who was hurt. And not only did we get to see him throw the rock around, but then we got to see him do what none of the Mannings did, which was run at full speed and look actually athletic and actually fast. And now I say all that to say Quinn Ewers is week to week, so he may not even play next week. So we may be getting Arch Manning whether we like it or not. Here's the real question: if you're Sark, Steve Sarkisian, for those who don't know, the coach of Texas, is this a good problem to have, knowing these Michigan or knowing these Texas boosters and knowing these Texas fan base, how they've already wanted Arch? But mind you, Quinn Ewers has been playing great. He's probably a Heisman candidate early in the season. So, like, is this a good problem for Sark to have, or are you kind of like, man, I kind of wish Quinn would stay healthy and we didn't have to really deal with this right now because we're really rolling.
I think it's a great problem to have, and the reason I say that is because you're giving Arch some experience. But again, this weekend he played against UTSA, and then next week I can't remember who they played, but it's pretty much a
Yeah.
nobody, somebody
So
they
next
should
week,
roll over.
so I'll give you this. So next week they play ULM, Louisiana Monroe. They'll smack them, and then I think the next week they play Mississippi State, and then I believe they have a bye, and then they play the Red River Rivalry with Oklahoma. So
So,
when do you want Quinn Ewers to come back? That's a really interesting thing. But go ahead.
no, I think you want him to come back to Oklahoma game. I'm happy you read that schedule out to me because Arch King, you do two things. You pacify him because it's like, okay, you did get some playing time this year. Yeah, you didn't start the whole season, but you got some playing time. It's not like it's just a wasted year. And then two, he's getting playing time against smaller schools, which is still good for his growth. But you're not throwing him out there with the wolves. You're not throwing him at the fire against Oklahoma or Georgia or like in the SEC championship game, where you're hoping that Quinn Ewers is back and healthy by that point, and he's played well enough where even if some people want to see Arch, they're not going to have an argument when Quinn gets back out there because he's played well enough up to that point. Now, the only way this backfires is if Quinn comes back and he's not 100% healthy and he starts playing bad. Yeah, you got a little situation on your hand. I will be honest about that.
See, so I basically agree with everything you said because it's a good problem to have. By the way, this has always been an existing problem. People have always wanted at Texas for Arch Manning to play because people have been really up and down on Quinn Ewers. Although he's actually, if you look at it, been really, really good for the most part. I know it like sounds worse than what he actually has been playing like in the past couple years. But my only thing is if Arch balls these next couple games, in particular the Mississippi State game, if Quinn Ewers hasn't played in 3 weeks, do you really want to throw him out to the fire the very first game back to try to get a rhythm in that rivalry game? Like, do you think that actually is something that would like be a part of Sark's consideration, or am I just looking at it too deep because like he's really really an experienced quarterback anyway?
No, I think you're looking at that in the correct manner. But my thing would be, wouldn't it be pretty much the same thing if you threw that game on Archer's shoulders? Because He hasn't had a training camp where he was, taking the number one reps. Up to this point, he hasn't been playing these two games. And then when he did get in this third game, they were already up by like 30. So like the game was already out of hand, if we're going to be honest with you. So like if you throw him, even if he starts next week and the following week, if you throw him against Oklahoma, aren't you kind of throwing him at the Wolves a little bit?
I mean, I guess I would say yes and no. Well, I would say no because at that point, before the Texas Oklahoma game, he would have played 2 full weeks of action. And let's just say he looked great. Like this is just a hypothetical scenario, but if he
Hmm.
looked great, then that's why I'm saying it's like, hey, you just take the guy that's rolling. You don't want to like, kind of like the Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick situation. It's kind of like, yeah, they probably were going to want to go to Kaepernick at some point anyway. Maybe this is earlier than what we thought, but could this be a Wally Pipp situation where he just takes his spot and doesn't come back? And that's horrible to say because Quinn Ewers is a guy that's probably going to be a first round draft pick, probably going to be in New York for the Heisman, ceremony. So like, you know what I mean there?
But then I don't think they would do this. But again, I guess the other question would be, would they do what Michigan did? Alex Orji and David Mills, like have the two quarterback system. I mean, I know I've
No,
never
no,
seen
no,
that
no, no,
work,
no,
but
no, 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 no,
no,
no,
no.
no, no. We already don't like that. You and I talked about that with Michigan a lot. We don't really like that as it is. I feel like you run the two quarterback system. That means you don't got one quarterback that you really going all in with. I'm sorry. That's how
Oh,
I feel about.
I feel that 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, this situation will be a little bit different, but yes.
Yeah, this would be, and the thing is, it's like with those two quarterback systems, you got to have one guy that's like, if it's you're doing the Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, you got one guy that like, hey, he's really good at the goal line. He's got like this particular set of skills. Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers are like similar skill sets where they're guys that are both excellent passers, at least appears to be, and can both also equally probably run the same. So I mean, it's not like what are you really gaining by taking one out and putting in over the other outside of just ruining somebody else's rhythm. So I mean, I think it's going to be a tough call. I mean, this is something that we're going to monitor. Texas is probably the best team in the country right now, especially Georgia kind of looked really shaky against Kentucky. So I want to monitor that situation. Obviously, we got Miami coming up against USF, so we're going to keep that going there. But Trey, listen, we got to give the Florida State update. I mean, we came on here last week and was saying 0-2 was bad. I watched parts of the Memphis game. I was bouncing between a couple of games. I don't know if you got to get more eyes on it than me, but
Hey,
but
yes,
can,
I did.
but all right, can you then just do it like this? Because every time I turned over, they were getting a three and out. It wasn't looking great. What am I missing? Like, what is Florida State missing here? But besides the obvious, they can't stop the run. But like, what are they missing here that has it start so bad? Because as bad as we might have thought it was before, it's compounding now at 0-3.
So I'm gonna give you a few stats.
Okay,
They played 3 games so far. They've had one run rushing play that's gained them more than 10 yards.
just one play, individual play.
One play out of 3 games.
Wow.
Out of all the FBS teams, I'm thinking it's like 134. The offensive rating is 133. They're the next to last worst offensive rating team in all of FBS football. It just it was kind of an implosion. Their strength was supposed to be the offensive line and defensive line. The offensive line sucks.
Yeah.
And DJU is not. I go back to that Cam Newton quote about being a game manager, or what was the other one option? It
I
was
think he
game
said
manager, or
game manager, game changer, I believe it was.
think it. Yeah, that's what it was. Game manager, game changer. DJU's at best a game manager. That's what he was at Oregon State. You're supposed to supplement that by having good wide receivers and a good running game to back them up. They don't have a running game. They have wide receivers that cannot create separation. Yes, DJU misses passes here and there, and I don't think he should be starting anymore because again, the offensive line is bad and he's so slow. Like he can't. It's like he's just gonna take a sack every play. So like he shouldn't be starting. But it doesn't help that he doesn't have anything else backing him up. Like he doesn't have a Keon Coleman or Johnny Wilson. He doesn't
Yeah.
have a good rushing attack. It's all on him. And like I said, he's a good at best. He's an okay game manager. I don't even say good. He's at best an okay game manager.
I mean, it just shouldn't be this bad. Everything you're saying is correct and the stats are bad. I just don't think it should ever be this bad where they can't even get a win. By the way, two of these games were at home. And this isn't
Yes.
really the NFL and stuff or the NBA. Like, home field advantage actually matters at big time locations in college football, particularly at Doak Campbell. So I'm just really shocked that it's this bad. But let's go next steps here because we're looking at Florida struggling. We're looking at Florida State struggling. You sent me the article of Florida State fans already just, hey, this is what the buyout would look like if Mike Norvell was gone. I'm not saying that they actually going to do it, but like, what's the next steps? Because I mean, you got the ears to the ground in Tallahassee. I know some people are probably calling for Mike Norvell's head. Maybe some people aren't. Are they just kind of we got to see how the season plays out? And
No,
by the
I would say
way,
about 20% are calling for his head.
okay,
20% if I had to give you a number.
okay, about 20% of okay, so that's low. So I thought it would be more. And then the second question I would be is how important is that Florida State game? Because I know that's important to everybody in both locations. Like, can that salvage? I mean, it's not gonna salvage the season, but can that paint a little bit of a better picture for what Florida State can be if they win that game, or that game just? I mean, a game always means something, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is how much will it mean because both schools are really struggling? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I would say this on Florida State part, this it's both of their last games of the regular season. So for Florida State's purposes, I guess it just depends on what their record is because, you know, God forbid they're like 1-10 at that point. Winning that game doesn't really matter. Like that's not going to change any kind of optics. But I guess if they are on the bubble of being a bowl team, like they're like 5-7, then okay. Or not 5-7, but 5-6. Okay, you know what I mean? It does a little bit. It gets them to the bowl, but that's it. Like, let's keep that in mind. It doesn't do a whole lot. So
Yeah.
the big thing about it is Florida State, I'm a little more tapped in just because I'm from the area. It's hard to get NIL data, but from the best data we can see, Florida State's in the top 15 as far as NIL payments for this team. And obviously they're not getting a large return. So the question is for Mike Norvell is, does the bottom fall out? Like, do the boosters say, you know what, we're not going to give you any more money? Because he's going to need some money to turn his team around quickly. And if he doesn't get that money, then I think this is the beginning and the end of his tenure there.
So you think it's also just a big roster issue as well too? Like in terms of like they just need a roster turnaround because they lost a lot of guys. Like that would be a part of what would just solve this.
They need a roster turnaround because they lost a lot of guys. And then the guys they went into the portal to get, that's the problem about going into the portal. It can help you tremendously. Like we saw Colorado for all the jokes people like to make, they had tremendous growth last year compared to the year before. But it can also burn you if you get the wrong guys. And I think that he just miscalculated this year and he got the wrong guys. And now he's going to need to tap into that portal again so he can replace the guys that he lost last year and he can get better guys the following year.
That's
And
interesting.
his high school recruiting sucks too. So like he's been living and dying by the portal.
Oh, okay. So it's been mainly been Porto. Okay, gotcha.
Oh yeah, no, his recruiting sucks. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So he's on the Coach Prime program and he's just going to the portal. Speaking of Coach Prime, quickly they got the dub. Do you have any thoughts on the Colorado State game?
I know a lot of people are making a big deal about Shedeur not shaking the other quarterback's hand, but I mean the other quarterback was talking trash, so like I don't blame him. And I would say this: Colorado looked better than they did last week against Nebraska. Hell, they looked better than any time I saw them last year, period. So I think Colorado showed tremendous growth, and I think they can, they've won 2 games so far. Colorado might be able to make a bowl game. That's what I would say about them.
Well, listen, they were able to protect Shador a little bit better. I'm happy about that. I'm happy. I'm actually, I'm not usually big on the whole cocky situation, but yeah, that quarterback and receiver. We always talk about when Colorado talks crazy. The Colorado State, like they were talking crazy. They was talking. They was talking. That was warranted. I felt like you can't come up and shake it. Now I understand as a competitor and like a good sportsmanship. I would have been cool if he would have shook hands with him and been the bigger man. But like sometimes you don't feel like doing it, and honestly, this is what Colorado's mo because Coach Prime wouldn't have done it either. I mean, I know you saw the handshake at the end of the game with him with the Colorado State coach, and they still got bad blood from last year. That was not a friendly handshake. These guys do not like each other. So yeah, so I mean, it's just that energy between those two. Now I will say this: Travis Hunter, Trey. Let me tell you something. I don't know if he's gonna play receiver or corner. I like him at corner, but man, he's special. And I just wanted him to have the only thing my only goal for the Colorado program this year, besides being bowl eligible, which is a shot in the dark, but they got to find a way to let Travis Hunter keep producing. He got to get to New York. Like that talent, we're not going to see that come around a lot. often in our lifetime that's even able to play both positions and allowed to. Because there's a lot of guys that could probably do it, maybe not do it as well, but can do it, but they're not going to get the opportunity. Travis Hunter's special, Trey. I mean, it's just special. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that he's special. I want to see him get to the Heisman. I don't know if he's going to win it, but I want to see him at least be a finalist, and just at least we can, put his season on display for what he's been putting on. But listen, let's pivot a little bit to the NFL. Speaking of display, we got to talk about Tua real quick. Listen, Tua had another concussion. Everyone's seen the play. By the way, Trey, no one's really talking about this, but I mean, damn, Tua. Every time you got a concussion, it got to be on prime time. I mean, like every time it's on prime time, Trey. Like we can't even. It's not even at 1 o'clock where we can sneak it. You know what I'm saying? It's like everybody got to be watching when he has this. So he's on IR for as we're recording this, he's on IR for the next 4 games. There's a lot of people calling for this guy's retirement. I don't want to make the decision for him. I know your thoughts and how you were thinking about it in the moment, but now you've had a couple days. What do you think the next step should be? You know, I guess the best question, because we know what the next steps will be for Tua. He's going to evaluate the doctors, make the best decision for him. But let's go with the Dolphins route. Like, what do the Dolphins do? Paying a quarterback $200 million. We know he's a good quarterback. He's established that. He stayed healthy all last year, played all 17 games, but then he had a relapse with this situation. I feel like the Dolphins are in a tough spot. Everybody's talking about the Tua situation, but the Dolphins are in a really tough spot organizationally. What would be like your thinking if you were them?
So I would think about doing maybe a soft rebuild, and what I mean by that is at least getting a quarterback in this next draft. And it doesn't have to be like you using a first round pick. I mean, it could be round 3 or round 4. But doing something like Green Bay did with Jordan Love, where we like you, but we're going to get a quarterback ahead of time because we know eventually 2 or 3 years down the road, this isn't going to last. And I think that's where you have to kind of be with Tua. It's like, we like you. We want you to finish here, your career here. We want this contract to play out in its full entirety. But we just don't know if that's going to happen. Like, let's be honest about it. And I think Tua can even admit, like, he doesn't know if that's going to happen. So I think that's what I would do. That's what I mean by a soft rebuild. Like, I would still plan for as if we're going to have Tua, but you need that backup plan because right now they got what Tyler Huntley is the backup quarterback, I guess. Like, I don't, that's just not going to cut it. Not for a team that's, all in on winning now. Not for a team that has Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Like, that's just not going to cut it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. And now, obviously, it's easier said than done. It works if you draft a Jordan Love, but we could also go through second, third round picks that don't hit. But I understand you got to take a shot of a guy you like. The problem with the Dolphins, and the reason I agree with you, is they got the oldest roster in the NFL. Trey, I don't know if people know that they are the oldest roster. So even Tyreek Hill, sneaky 30, 31 years old. Jalen Ramsey's now 30. You got Calais Campbell, Teron Armstead, the left tackle. If I named the Dolphins' top 6 or 7 players, 5 of them are over the age of 30. I mean, it's like it's staggering. So they're in a situation where they unfortunately have to really win right now, really this year, and then maybe next year. Because I would imagine this year and next year is really the last 2 years you're going to get like a somewhat Jalen Ramsey or Tyreek Hill prime, right? Like where those guys are still at like pretty elite levels. Especially Ramsey, we can kind of see a little bit of a fall off, and corners usually don't age well. Armstead's probably going to retire after the year. Calais Campbell's gone, so it's a really tough situation. And if I'm the Dolphins, this was the kind of the year where I kind of got to go win now and win this division and take this division from the Bills when they really don't have any reliable weapons as of yet that we know of. Um, and I'm interested to see Trey if the Dolphins play well. So right now they're 1-1. Two is out for at least 4 games. I don't know when the soonest he would come back, but let's just say the second half of the season. If the Dolphins are still like in relative playoff contention, like is there a situation where they obviously they're going to play him, but like what's the situation where they don't play him, and is there a situation where they feel like they got to rush him? Because I mean, you don't want to do that, but man, it's just really really tough because organizationally, they made such an investment in that guy. You know what I mean? And then they got to have him because the only way this offense works, you're going to see how you feel with Skylar Thompson, these guys, and people are going to really appreciate how good actually Tua is.
No, I think the time where they decide not to play him, it would be if, let's say they lose all 4 games in a row, which is a possibility.
Yeah.
and that they just admit to themselves, like, you know what, that's 5 losses already. We're out of the playoff picture. At that point, then I think they could say, let's not rush the Tua situation. Let's keep him out for another 2 or 3 games, make sure he's fully healthy, and then bring him back into the fold. Because then at that point, we know we're not going to make the playoffs, and we have a good chance of getting a better pick, possibly the next future quarterback of that team. So I think that's the only chance. Well, let's say they go 3-1. I don't want to see you rush to it back, but as soon as the doctor's clear, I think he's back on the field and you go all in and trying to win that Super Bowl, which is what they were doing this year anyway.
It's a tough one. I just think this situation is even tougher than a couple years ago, just because unfortunately it's a business, and how good this team is with how much they paid him. All that stuff has to be considered. Two has already said that he's not planning to retire, so you know he wants to play. I know it's a liability thing, people feel like, but you also, if the guy say he wants to play and if he wants to put it on the line, it's not the Dolphins' job to say, "Hey, we're going to protect you from yourself." I know it sounds bad, but it's not the Dolphins' job. Tua's got to make that decision, and he's got to live with that decision, unfortunately. So, but obviously, we wish him the best of luck, just getting healthy. Scary to see. Never want to see any player go through that, especially a player you've seen on national TV. Literally, probably 2 years ago, almost the day would that happen. So, I wish Tua nothing the best and staying healthy. And obviously, even as a Dolphins fan, we need it back, just in the lineup. But speaking of not in the lineup, Trey, I don't know what's going on with the Bryce Young situation. I've been racking my brain thinking about what could have went wrong. I always relate things to Tua with how bad his first couple years looked with, some questionable coaching, no weapons, no offensive line. It seemed like Carolina's situation got better, but Bryce Young, the first couple games looked worse. Now, here's my question. Bryce Young got benched. We know he got benched. Are you surprised? I'm not. I know you're surprised. That's a bad question. How bad must it really be if he got benched 2 games into the season? Because I'm thinking, what did Canales see on film after watching these games that was like, we cannot throw this guy back out here? And then, really, what's your outlook? Is he a guy that you can see ever being a starter on this team again? I mean, he can compete with another job on another team, but can he be on the bench for a little while and be in a situation where he can see and grow and then get better? Almost like reverse developing him from what he previously started out with.
Well, I think to answer your first question, I think Cornelis saw exactly what you and I saw, and this is a quarterback who really just didn't look like an NFL quarterback. Now, I think he has the talent. I know that there were some concerns about his size, coming to the draft, but regardless, I still feel like he has the talent to be at least at the bare minimum a serviceable starter in the NFL. But I think his confidence is just shot. Now, whether or not he ever gets his confidence back, I don't know because one thing I think you and I we could attest that we've seen in our lives is a lot of times when athletes lose that confidence, it's like a 50-50 chance that they get it back in our, you know what I mean? It's not a given. So
Especially at
I
that
do think,
position too. Yeah.
yeah, at that position where you need it the most. So like, I'm curious to see if he can get it back. If he does get it back, though, I don't think it will be with the Panthers. I just think that they are, for lack of a better term, a piss poor organization. I don't think they gave him anything to work with last year. And this year, yeah, it got a little bit better, but it only got a little bit better because they were so damn sorry last year. Like it's not saying much that they got a little bit better. Like so,
Yeah.
like I don't. I'm really curious. Like I want to see Andy Dalton play like a veteran. If he goes out there and looks like complete trash, without a doubt in my mind, I know for a fact that's the organization. Now that doesn't mean that Bryce Young is going to get his mojo back. It might just be gone. But you can ruin a player. Like look at Mac Jones. I'm not saying Mac Jones was ever going to be like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. No, he wasn't going to be at that level. But look at somebody who was a Pro Bowler in their first or second year in the league. And then after that, they completely fell off the radar because you mismanaged them. You gave them bad OCs. You didn't run plays that were designed for them. You didn't give them weapons to use during the game. And look what happened when his company shot. He was a shell of himself, and now he's in Jacksonville. So like, it's just a bad situation all around. I do think Bryce Young will start again in Carolina, but I just don't know for how long, and I really don't think he's going to succeed there.
That's the thing with Bryce Young starting again in Carolina, because I don't know what they want to see. I'm assuming it's just some growth in practice, but he won't be getting the first team reps. We know Andy Dalton's not the future. And I can tell you this right now, Trey. Andy Dalton's going to play better than Bryce Young. And that's simple for the fact of Andy Dalton's played a lot of years in the NFL. He's seen a bunch of defenses. He's a veteran. He's been a decent to good starting quarterback in the NFL. He's going to be able to move the ball offensively. I'm not saying it's going to be a top 10 offense or anything like that, but it's not going to look like he's not going to miss this many throws that Bryce Young was missing in the first couple of weeks. Like you said, we weren't even seeing him miss those throws in his rookie year. His confidence was just shot, like you said. Here's the thing. The confidence thing we talk about, we don't typically see it rebuilt, but there's been a couple situations, and Tua being one. We see Sam Darnold right now, Trey, 2-0,
Yeah.
with a coach that believes in him, with legitimate weapons. Obviously, not everybody's gonna have Justin Jefferson, but you got other receivers, Addison out there. You got guys that can play. I know Hawkinson's hurt, but we've seen this new NFL. If you get a guy around an offensive minded coach that believes in him, that gets him good weapons, you can get a guy's confidence back. And now it's not easy. It's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a while. But I mean, I would say I don't know if you agree. I would say Bryce Young probably has a higher ceiling than a Tua in terms of just his skill set from what we saw in Alabama. I know they're both smaller guys. Bryce Young is a really small dude in general too. But in terms of the arm strength and stuff like that, he's got some traits that you definitely like, probably over Tua. And Tua was able to get a match made in heaven with Mike McDaniel. I think that's what he's looking for. They were hoping Dave Canales is that. Not saying that he isn't going to be that, but I don't know if benching him and then bringing him back in the same organization is going to get him that result that he wants. I hope it isn't, but it may be a situation where it's like a Baker Mayfield thing where you're stuck, kind of going to your next situation, and then you kind of get some growth from there. So listen, I really hope Bryce Young. I wish the best for him. I mean, as far as the Carolina Panthers are concerned, we could just close up shop now, Trey. I mean, 0-2, we could just close this. We could close this down. We could close the garage. It's over with. Look, a lot of teams started 0-2, and I wanted to finish up with this. A bunch of teams 0-2, Trey. And I know I don't want you to give the obvious answer because the teams that are 0-2, I don't know if you know the stat, Trey. I found this out today. Only 5% of teams that start 0-2 make the playoffs. 5%. So teams that are 0-2 right now. You got the Ravens, you got the Bengals, and the entire AFC South. That's not the Texans. So Colts, Jaguars, Titans, Denver Broncos, Giants, Panthers, Rams. Give me a team that you think. I'm not saying it's definitely going to make the playoffs, but like, hey, they could probably turn this around and get to the playoffs. And then maybe we can go the opposite way. A team, let's not go with like the Panthers, but a team that's a little bit shocking that is going to really, really be this bad, and we didn't know they were going to be this bad.
The team that I think can make the playoffs still would be the. It's funny enough I'm saying it because I'm talking about a quarterback that, I'm not all in on, but I would say the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the reason I say that just because of the
Ooh,
pieces surrounding them. And I didn't expect them to start off this bad. And the one saving grace is Trevor Lawrence, although he hasn't played great, he hasn't played terrible. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like when we saw
fair.
him play against Miami, it wasn't a terrible game. He just he left a little bit of food on the table. That's how or food on the plate. That's how I would describe it. Like he left a little play here and there, but it wasn't a terrible game. And they had ETN. I like Doug Peterson as a coach. Like they have enough going on where I think that they could make the playoffs. But man, I also brought this team up because I just wanted to say this one point. At some point, I think we are gonna have the Trevor Lawrence talk though.
Yeah,
Even though I
yeah.
say he hasn't
We've
played
been
great,
putting
like
this
he's been
off.
playing okay,
Yeah,
but we got to have that talk. Yeah.
yeah. Listen, let me tell you this about the Trevor Lawrence point. First two games of the year, and I know I'm gonna sound like I'm making excuses. They play the Dolphins, Trey, up 17-7. ETN is going into the end zone to make it 24-7 in the third quarter of that game. And the fumble gets punched out and the game changes. So he goes into the end zone and scores that, Trey. They could have won that game. Like 24-7, they probably win in that game. Like you said, he didn't play great. He didn't also play bad either. He made a couple throws when he needed to. Second game, Trey, in Cleveland, we know how tough that defense is. In like a bad rain situation, you saw that was going on. It was like a ugly game, and they still had a
Yes.
chance to win it at the end. So like we could literally be talking about a team that's like 2-0. Like their point, like, I think the point differential is like -8 or something. It's not like crazy. So they're a team. I kind of agree with you with that. Now, let me just go. Can I go? Let me go the other way because I think there's a couple teams we think can make it. I'm out on the Bengals, Trey. I'm out. I'm out. Out on the Bengals.
Oh,
Out.
why?
Here's the thing. I just look at the AFC North first of all. A couple of those teams are going to be out, and I just think at some point the bill comes due. And what I mean by that is there was way too many things that happened in the offseason with the Bengals that we kind of just let slide because, oh, it's the Bengals. They got Joe Burrow. They'll figure it out. And they figured it out before. And every single year, Trey, they do this. They start the 0-2 or 1-3 or whatever the case, and then they come back. We start in the offseason. Joe Burrow's coming off of surgery. He has an injury where he can not even throw 3 days in a row. We've never seen a quarterback have that injury, so we can't start there. Jamar Chase is doing a hold in, and he's showing up and he's not practicing. He's upset about the contract. He clearly had some frustrations. I'm not saying that had to do with the contract, but in that game against the Chiefs, then all that's going on. We still forget T. Higgins is actually the one who requested a trade before Jamar Chase. He's just kind of just playing football. He has a hamstring injury, Trey. Could that hamstring injury just last longer? The defense
Oh yeah.
played well. Yep, defense played well at times. Didn't play well at other times. I just think at some point the bill comes due, and the problem with this year, as opposed to other years of them starting, 0-2 or even potentially 0-3 is if they go start 0-3 or 1-4, they're gonna lose the locker room. And that's a situation that they haven't in the past because guys are already frustrated with their own individual situations going on. I don't think it's a situation like another team like Baltimore where they got some other things set in stone that they can kind of right the ship. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely agree with you. Now, the one thing I will say, like they do have an ahead even Baltimore is that they won at a higher level than Baltimore. That's not to say that Baltimore hasn't been successful. I mean, they
Yeah.
made it to the AFC Championship last year, so they've obviously had some real success. But the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl. Now, granted, that was like 3 years ago, so we all living off the past,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
still.
yeah, yeah. And it's another thing too. Sneaky or what's up with Mark Andrews? Sneaky, sneaky. I just want to ask. I just want to ask.
He's getting up there. He had the terrible ankle injury last year. He's been kind of a little bit banged up. Tight ends a really physical position. I listen. He's starting to calm down a little bit, and unfortunately for him, Isaiah Likely is starting to play really well. Like his replacement is right there, so like it's kind of tough. It's the same thing with Travis Kelsey though. Travis Kelsey has Patrick Mahomes, which helps hide a lot of that. But if you and I, we've watched enough football, I think we both can agree that Travis Kelsey's starting to take a little dip. Like he's been taking a dip probably since last year a little bit.
Probably, I've said
Like
probably the last couple years. I think the biggest reminder though, he had said he was pacing himself, and then he really went on an incredible playoff run last year with performing.
including
Especially,
the
and I
Super
always
Bowl,
think
yeah.
about that Ravens game when he had like the 9 or 10 catches and was really like the best player on the field. So you give him the benefit of the doubt, but yeah, I mean it's not the same Kelsey. And by the way, sneaky with the Chiefs, everyone kind of just assumes that like when somebody plays at Mahomes, that like all these weapons are gonna just like really work out. We don't even really know if Xavier Worthy's like really good. I know he had like a nice game on Monday Night Football with 2 catches, or the first game of the year with 2 catches, but like we don't really even know if he's that good yet. You know, we like Rasheed Rice. I don't know if anybody like loves Rasheed Rice. We love Kelsey. He's also getting older. Like, yeah, Trey, don't even talk about the left tackle. I mean, the left tackle can't even block anybody at this point. So like I don't even know this team is gonna like have to turn into like the new. I don't mean to make this a Chiefs thing, but like this team is almost gonna have to be like those New England Patriots teams where like they're winning off of that defense and running the ball. And by the way, Pacheco's hurt, so there goes that. So
Yep.
and then
And he's
I
probably out for
still
a while.
right, and they don't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't believe either. Still, right?
Nope.
So you're down to the fifth round pick that you drafted, the Clay Matthews looking guy at running back. So like, I mean,
And he fumbled in his
and he
first
fumbled.
game.
Yep, and he fumbled. And we love Pacheco. I think most people in the league love Pacheco, like the way he runs. But not having him is going to be huge. The one thing I'm actually confident. There are only two things I'm really confident about at this point with the Chiefs. It's Mahomes and that defense. Like that defense is going to show up. I know they're going to show up and hold you within 20 points or less. And Mahomes is going to do just enough to win the games, but it's not going to be explosive. It reminds me of those old Patriots teams. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't. I mean, the Chiefs are still going to be there. You feel like ultimately at the end, but
I
some
mean,
of these
yeah, isn't
teams
this the same discussion we were having last year?
it probably was. It probably was the same discussion. It probably was the same exact discussion, and they still figured it out. So I don't want to be the one to doubt them. You know what I mean? But when I look at the rest of the AFC, I agree Baltimore is going to be actually in the mix. I mean, Buffalo looks better than what we thought. You know what I'm saying? Houston, top to bottom, just talent wise, has got to be around there. Quickly before we get out of here, what'd you think of the Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud show? Because I thought, real quick, this is what the NBA should be doing and marketing the two new young stars right on Sunday Night Football so you can get familiar with them. And by the way, they both kind of played really well. They had great moments, some not so good moments, but they both made some throws. NBA should be taking notes. But what do you think about Caleb overall? I know we talked about Stroud a bunch, but like really, what do you think of Caleb mostly?
So I think Caleb is still learning what he can and can't do in the NFL, and I'm not even mad about that. It's his second game, and I like that. Like, go ahead and get it out your system. Learn what your strengths are and what you're able to get away with, because it does change. Like, I think yesterday he was kind of running around, and like defensive end was chasing him when he was about to go out of bounds, and he still threw the ball over his shoulder, and it got picked off. And it's just like, okay, you got away with that at USC against other college athletes. But now these defensive ends are just as fast, if not faster than you. So you're not going to get away with that. So I feel like that's the thing I'm learning about Caleb Williams. And for the most part, like you still see his elusiveness. You still see the arm talent. Like there's things there that you see that's like, okay, I can work with this. Like I hate to pile on him, but like Bryce Young, we haven't seen anything like that. Like not a player here or there where we can go point to. That's why they drafted you. With
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, yeah, we have that, yeah. So I like that. Still has a lot to learn. I don't think the Chicago Bears are gonna make the playoffs this year. They still have a ways to go. But I like what I've seen so far. I mean, he has the learning curve, but everybody does.
Listen, my only thing I'll say to the Caleb Williams thing, agree with everything you said. He, he's got to, and this is again year one. We're talking about 2 games in, so not saying that he won't be able to do this. But I heard Todd McShay make this point, Trey, and he's like, "Would this is this what Mahomes would have looked like if he didn't start? If he would have had to start that first year and they didn't have Alex Smith and Andy Reid? Because like there's moments, but it's a little sloppy. Also, like there seems to be at some points like no footwork going on. We're just like dropping back, throwing off the back foot. We're not actually standing in the pocket making throws. Like you said, we're kind of just getting flushed out of the pocket sometimes when we don't need to and trying to make hero ball throws. And we know that was a criticism of Mahomes when he was at Texas Tech and even early in his career when he did play. So like it's kind of like one of those things like this what Mahomes would have kind of looked like if he didn't have that year to sit. And if that's the case, I don't want this year to develop these bad habits that could eventually potentially ruin Caleb Williams. So that's just something I want to throw out there. I don't think that's going to actually happen. I think he's going to end up being an excellent player in the league, but like he still hasn't figured out yet how to just drop back and just kind of like throw in the pocket and be that point guard. He's kind of like trying to like create a little bit too much for my liking, but like we talked about, we didn't talk about this on the pod today, but like maybe that looks different when you have a Keenan Allen, right? Like a guy that you could just rely on to be open when you needed to be open. Maybe that could be different when Roma Dunze develops. He dropped a touchdown catch that was probably pretty catchable. So I want to see how those things go. But as far as weapons go, you feel like he should be in a good spot to kind of produce. So, you know, we'll kind of see it go as it goes along. But CJ Stroud looked good as usual as well too. I don't know if you got any thoughts on him as well, but he
I
looked
mean,
good.
he looks pretty much how we expected him to look. Like he's right on track. He hasn't taken a step back. Sometimes you get worried about that sophomore slump. No, no, no. He looks just as good as advertised, and honestly, he looks like he's the future.
Yeah, he's a real deal. Like I like I'm locked in. I was wrong about CJ Stroud. I not that said he wasn't gonna be good, but why I was ever considering Bryce Young over him, it's gonna be an all time take. All time
But let
bad
me ask
take.
you this before we get off. If
Mhm.
CJ goes to Carolina, I feel like it's a different story. I don't know if he looks this bad, but I feel like it's a different story still.
That's a great question. I mean, it's really hard to say because man, a situation that we thought was bad in Houston actually wasn't because they hit on D'Amico Ryans, you know. And the biggest thing too is they did what a lot of teams do now. They paired him up with Tank Dell. He's like, hey, I really like this receiver. Can you grab him for me? Great. Joe Burrow was like, hey, I know we need a lineman, but I really like this one guy that I used to throw to in college. His name is Jamar Chase. Can you grab him? Great. Dolphins are like, hey, do you know this guy Jalen Waddle? You used to play with him at Alabama. Would you mind throwing the ball to him again? Great. So like they did them a service by doing that. With Bryce Young, he didn't even get the biggest part I always think about in the trade is not all the picks that given up, it's the DJ Moore thing. Like not having one guy that's like a legitimate number one receiver to start your career, not a tight end, nothing. That's like, hey, I have one guy, if nothing else. If stuff hits the fan, I know he's going to be open, and he didn't have that. So you know, that's unfortunate. I don't know the answer to that question. I would venture to say that CJ Stroud would struggle as well too, but I would think he's such a better player than Bryce Young that he would figure some more things out that Bryce Young didn't, and that's just because of maybe some physical limitations as well too. To be fair, so but I'm pulling for Bryce Young. I hope he gets a starting gig later this year, whether it's with the Panthers or not. But I think he'll get back on the schneid. So but either way, I do want to thank everybody so much for joining us once again. Again, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. We do thank everybody so much for always joining us. We'll drop some content for you guys this week. Let us know what you think in the comments. Of course, like, subscribe, all that stuff, rating, all that stuff helps us a lot. So thank you. And on the way out, of course, I will swing it to Trey.
Hey, I'm gonna give before I get started with the exit, I want to say one thing. Nolan, congratulations. You're 2-0 in fantasy, man. You're doing good.
I
I
am
just
2
had to
0.
say
I
that.
forgot the fantasy update. I am 2-0 in fantasy. I won by 1 point. Won by 1 point. So
I
not
did the
the
same thing, so hey, dude, but I'm not hating. Good on you.
Yeah, we'll take the win. We'll take the win anytime we get. That's our fantasy update. Yeah, 2-0. I got injuries though, Trey. I'm on the way. I got Cooper Cups out, so I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Woo.
I might have to make some moves. Well, how's your roster? Is your because everybody's getting killed with injuries. I see online. Are you getting destroyed there or
So I'm
what?
not getting killed with injuries, but I'm not getting the production that I want out of a lot of my positions, so that has me a little bit concerned.
But you're kind of like, are you in that boat where you're like, it's still early. I don't want to make a move yet because like they
Yeah,
might
yeah,
pop
I'm not gonna
off.
rock the boat yet, but I'm looking. I'm like, ooh, 'cause if we'd have went 0-2 now, we would have went nuclear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The record makes you feel different. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But no, again, hey, congrats, Nolan, on that. Like I said, we're gonna keep you to continue to give everybody fantasy updates. But again, like you said, we're on all the major platforms. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until next week, peace.